failing standards, health and hygiene issues for students and staff made the intervention of the King's College Old Boys Association inevitable. To address some of these challenges in King's College Old Boys Association designed rehabilitation and maintenance intervention programs carried out individually by King's College Old Boys or by class sets through the KCOBA Class Sets Legacy Program to the tune of tens of millions of naira last decade. The Old Boys remain unwavering in their support for their alma mater in fulfillment of their never-ending obligation thereto. In an unprecedented exercise, the KCOBA was also able to reach a milestone agreement with the Federal Ministry of Education to reduce the annual enrollment into King's College and Queen's College from the usual 600 to 700 previously to 350 in the 2019-2020 session. Unfortunately, the onset of the very disruptive COVID-19 pandemic earlier this year and ongoing has further compounded the challenges and exposed new ones. For instance, the huge digital divide that exists between public and private-owned schools is evidenced by the speed of adoption of e-learning by students and teaching staff of private schools, while most public schools have remained closed since the lockdown in March 2020. King's College Lagos and other federal government colleges that were able to benefit from a distance learning program did so on a platform donated free of charge by one of us, a member of the King's College Old Boys Association. This King's College Old Boy, who has asked to remain anonymous, also paid allowances to the teachers that developed the content for the distance learning program. The King's College School-Based Management Committee, a fallout of earlier public-private partnership campaigns during the Chief Obasanjo administration, championed this distance learning program to deliver hitch-free instructional sessions and assessments for students online. Unfortunately, there's still a long way to go towards the provision of more facilities and trainings that are required for a sustained technology-driven school system. Very recently, the 1975 to 82 class set, my set, the president's set, all sets, in commemoration of their 45th anniversary of enrollment, handed over through the King's College Tech Hub Group, fully completed and installed high-speed internet connectivity to King's College. The e-library, the staff room, the administration block, and the principal's office have been included in the footprint of this facility. As COVID-19 has altered the learning landscape, this capability could not have come at a better time. I am proud of this achievement, and I believe that we have given King's College a useful tool to help facilitate and augment learning. The theme of this year's Founders Day lecture was carefully chosen to learn from past failures and capitalize on gains towards building a 21st century Nigerian education system that is consistently and efficiently responsive to the ever-changing economic, technological, and socio-political changes globally. There is no doubt that the much-needed paradigm shift can be realized only through deliberate design rather than awaiting serendipity. The questions are evident. How does Nigeria develop, fund, and manage a visionary, futuristic, and innovative education system that is purpose-built and well-planned to foster in-depth knowledge through the integration of robust content and experiences that cultivate skills, competencies, mindsets, and worldviews that empower students to become critical thinkers, problem solvers, and lifelong learners. How do we ensure that our school administrators and the teaching faculty are adequately trained and seasoned with intellectual rigor, as no country can surpass the standard of its teachers? How do we employ cost-effective solutions using information technology to bridge the digital divide? How do we fund this educational revolution in a period wherein government revenues continue to deplete? Is it a challenge of inadequate funding or lack of funding efficiency in the education sector, or both? Can the nation afford more cuts in fiscal spending, in education expenditure? What options are available to the federal government of Nigeria to meet growing funding requirements of the education sector and set this crucial sector on a path for substantial growth? The quest is to build and maintain a policy thrust that aligns with this vision and with effective implementation. It is my considered opinion that the public-private partnership model is a panacea to the challenge of education funding. It provides a balance between the ever-increasing social demand for access and the need for quality education. Beyond rhetoric, the government needs to embrace the PPP model of education funding and bring in critical stakeholders to the system. Typical examples of successful PPP funding models exist in many developed and developing countries in the world today. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. I must not end my remarks without disclosing that the King's College Old Boys Association is ready and willing to commence a public-private partnership discussion with the federal government of Nigeria for the management of King's College Lagos. This will guarantee the inflow of the much-needed funds along with an enhanced management structure. These are the discussions we will be engaging in today at the 111th Founders Day teleconference lecture. We are optimistic that this lecture will not end as an academic exercise, but will inspire a cascading process that will culminate in the reformation of our educational system. Thank you very much.
Please, another round of applause for Dr. Oshini, representing the President of the King's College Old Boys Association. I have to say, after the description of the fracture on the President by Dr. Oshini, nobody will be left in doubt about his medical qualifications. My apologies, sir. I believe it's now time to take the report of the college. And it's my pleasure to invite the principal, King's College, Mr. Andrew Agada, to give us an update on the situation of our college. Thank you, sir.
His Excellency, Professor Yemi Osibanjo, Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, Chief of Staff to the President, His Excellency, the National Security Advisor, General Mungunu, Honorable Minister of State for Education, Honorable Emeka Nwajoba, the Permanent Secretary, Federal Ministry of Education, Architect Sonny Echono. My own president, His Excellency Alhaji Kashim Ibrahim, the president of King's College Old Boys Association, the chairman, board of trustees of King's College Old Boys Association, chairman, school-based management committee, Engineer Jani Ibrahim, other distinguished guests, distinguished old boys, vice principals, teachers, parents, kinsmen, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to King's College for the 111th King's Founders Lecture Day. I want to thank God for sparing our lives and granting us victory over COVID-19. I want to particularly thank the president of the KCOBA for the support we have received from the old boys so far, and also the chairman of the King's Week this year. King's College, as I assumed duties here last year, we faced some challenges which we overcame. As at this session, the student population of King's College stands at about 3,600, with a teacher population of 136. And our main mission is how to improve the academic performance of the school. And so we made our vision to be encapsulated into two major agendas: discipline and academic excellence. I am glad to inform you that there's great improvement on the aspect of discipline, both staff and students. For academic performance, within the period under review, the West African Senior School Certificate exam taken in 2019, our students in WASE, we enrolled 502 candidates, and 449 of them scored 5 credits and above, including English and mathematics, meaning that about 89% of them, if given admission, were qualified to go to tertiary institutions straight. In NECO, we registered 481 candidates, and 376 of them scored 5 credits and above in English and mathematics, representing about 79% of them. In WASE, the best 3 candidates, one had, that's Afugo Chibuke, scored 6A1 and 2B2. Duke Eze scored 6A1 and 2B2. And then Sani Rewan scored 4A1 and 3B2. In co-curricular activities, we are also doing well, but we see hope to improve. In the last year edition of Lagos State First Generation Colleges Association Games, which we now call GTV Cup, we won the cup, and because of COVID-19, we are still the champion, because this year's edition was interrupted by COVID-19. We also took part in the FEDCO Games held early this year at Port Harcourt. We won 1 gold medal, 2 silver medals, and the overall standing 10 out of 104 Unity colleges. We also have some interventions by the KCOBA, which we are immensely grateful. The 2006 set provided borehole at the High Johnson hostel. Also, they gave us 100 plastic chairs and tables for examination. The 1980 set, 75 to 80, provided high-tech internet access to the college. And on behalf of the college, they are negotiating with Google to hook us up to a platform where our children can be taught online, free. Of course, you are aware of the challenges we had, like you have heard from the address of the president. And with this, we will be able to now teach our students online even while they are at home. And we also want to appreciate the federal government for releasing funds for our capital projects. We renovated the SS1 block, and the landscaping of the main campus is ongoing. The school garden is also undergoing a facelift, courtesy of Honorable Batola. And we appreciate the PTA for also their contributions, most especially in supplementing teachers. As a principal of King's College, I want to really appreciate the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for appointing 2 of our illustrious sons recently in the person of Professor Ibrahim Gambari as Chief of Staff and our own President, Alhaji Kashim Ibrahim, as the Chairman Board of Trustees of TED Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, you are welcome. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agada. The 25th principal of King's College in our history. Thank you, sir. We have now come to the most important part of our program. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that subsequent speakers have set the tone for the discussions that we will have today. But it is now my pleasure to invite the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency, Professor Yemi Oshibanjo, SAN GCON, to give his keynote address on this important topic, on taking our education forward. Your Excellency, sir.
Thank you very much. The representative of Mr. President, the Chief of Staff to the President, Professor Agboola Gambari, CFR, the guest lecturer and Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, the National Security Advisor, Major General Babangana Mongunu, retired, the Minister of State for Education, Mr. Chukwuemeka Nwajuba, the Lagos State Commissioner for Education, Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo, former Emir of Kano, His Highness Muhammadu Sanusi II, the President of the Nigeria Bar Association, Mr. Olumide Akpata, the host and President of King's College Old Boys Association, Alhaji Kashim Ibrahim Imam, the Chairman of 2020 King's Week Committee, Pastor Itwa Igodalo, the Principal of King's College Lagos, Mr. Andrew Ali Agada, distinguished members of the King's College Old Boys Association present members of King's College, present students of King's College, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking the president of the King's College Old Boys Association, Alhaji Kashim Ibrahim Imam, for the invitation to speak at this 111th Founders Day celebration. For decades, King's College has produced many of Nigeria's, and indeed the world's, brightest and best in practically every field of human endeavor. And it's an honor to join you in celebrating 111 years of that excellence with you all here today. While saying this, I lay aside all rivalries and all old quarrels between my school and King's College. I certainly will not take the bait that Pastor Itwa laid out for me by raising these questions of rivalry, to be impolite on a day of celebration such as this, to even sound competitive. Today's theme, education, the way forward, is not about looking back. I think that it's about bracing for the future. Although these days, speaking of the future is almost irrelevant, because before you complete the word, the so-called future has actually arrived. But let me set down a few thoughts that might help in thinking through the issues. First is that we must recognize that our main endowment as a country is neither crude oil nor any other material resource. It is our people. Nigerians are our greatest asset. Second, our economic aspirations and our capacity to compete in the global economy will depend on how effectively we're able to educate our people, how effectively we're able to empower them to fulfill their potential. Our human capital reserves determine the quantum of useful foreign direct investment that will come into our country. The emergence of local innovators, the growth of productivity, and even the eruption of an entrepreneurial revolution, all will depend on the quality of education that our young men and women have. Third, the national conversation on education will be futile unless it also addresses the concerns faced at the lower levels of our society. The problem of out-of-school children and the huge deficit in education of girls. Fourth is a point of utmost importance, and it is that we need a laser focus on productivity, on character, and civic education. Fifth is a related point, and it's quite clear that we have to change both the substance of our education and also the method of educating our children. This is because this generation of young people need to be prepared for a world that thinks, operates, and rewards differently from what we were accustomed to. I will elaborate only on the fourth point. I think our educational design and content must take into account our current moral and social circumstances, our physical and mental constraints as a people. We are gifted as Nigerians with a confidence, resilience, and mental acuity that is by any standards exceptional. This is probably best demonstrated in how we excel, even in other countries, in sciences, in medicine, and even politics. But our attributes do not free us from what Edward Banfield what he describes as the moral basis of a backward society. And this is the self-interested, family-centric society, where often the public good is sacrificed for personal or parochial benefit. So education must lift the mind of the young beyond self. It must teach the primacy of community, of the good and the well-being of the collective over self. Every nation that has prospered has come to this point and has had to accept this as norm. One of the strong points of the education that many of you and I received was character, moral and ethical behavior, hard work, diligence, trustworthiness, self-denial, honesty, truth, fairness. Even in today's severely compromised moral environment, I must say that I've come across and worked with many from King's College who have demonstrated the strength of character, that a well-established moral compass brings. No developed nation has managed to skip this point and succeed. There must be, as a rule, a prevailing moral standard. Corruption or deviance is the exception, must be the exception, not the rule. Secondly, and here I will just for time conflict the thoughts of Papa Obafemi Awolowo and Professor Olumide Akintoye, a professor of architecture, where they argue, and as I've said, I'm conflating their views, that our education must imbue both skills and the mental magnitude required for creativity or productivity. Creativity is the capacity for value added in the transformation of material. Material in this sense may be either abstract or, as in, for example, the notes of music transformed into melody, or physical, as in cotton transformed into fabric. The wealth of a nation is, after all, not in the material resources available in the land, but in the productive capacity of the people. The way in which, or the way in which the people are equipped to add value to whatever it is that they find. And the matter of productivity or creativity as the path to recognition and success is not a light matter. It is fundamental to the development environment. Our learning environment must emphasize ideation and introspection, thinking, minds trained to think from conception to actualization. We must release that capacity to build physical and mental structures, concepts and processes much bigger than ourselves. When people are nurtured in the notion that rent-seeking or the prebendal capture of wealth or benefit by access to power is the path to success, then the society will not prosper. If few will capture all the resources, everyone else will be poor on their way there. On the other hand, when young people are taught that creativity and innovation with a business and personal culture of integrity, hard work, and diligence will find huge rewards, then the foundations for the good and prosperous society is laid. So where productivity is not the path to success, but capture, then corruption is inevitable. Corruption is symptomatic of societies that prefer a path different from creative and productive enterprise to wealth and success. Finally, there is a matter that I believe we must address, and it is with the challenges of government investment in education. The truth is that government resources alone cannot drive education, especially of the quality we know our nation needs. Many of us who have had the benefit of high quality education, secondary education, have seen how in one generation, our schools have become a depressing shadow of themselves. We can bemoan the problem for another generation, but nothing will change if we're not prepared to invest our resources in changing the narrative. I believe that KCOB, for example, have between them the resources, the connections, locally and internationally, to set King's College on the track to being one of the best secondary schools in the world, a status that it had barely 4 decades ago. The best schools in the world are beneficiaries of the commercial or altruistic investments of private individuals and corporations. All that is required is the will. The funds will follow. Let me again congratulate you all for these 111 history-making years and wish King's College a much greater 111 years ahead. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Another round of applause for His Excellency, the Vice President, please. Thank you. King's College has produced a lot of distinguished old boys, one of whom is, as you've heard earlier, the present Chief of Staff to the President, Federal Republic of Nigeria. Allow me to welcome again His Excellency Professor Ibrahim Agbola Gambari as he brings a goodwill message from the President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR.
The Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Your Excellencies, my lords, spiritual and temporal, old boys, staff, students, and friends of the Great King's College of Lagos, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a great honor to address you on the occasion of the 111th Foundation Day of this great institution, King's College, which holds a consequential position in the history and the development of our nation, right from its early beginnings at the start of the 20th century, through the course of the Nigerian experience, including amalgamation and the independence, and now as we approach the 60th anniversary of our country's independence. This is a place of history and greatness. Many great men of substance cut their teeth on these same grounds, even I. But the King's College I know is not necessarily the King's College of today. What has changed? What is different? What is good and what is bad? What must we do to ensure that we meet or exceed the lofty ideas of the founders of this great institution which they envisaged when this college was birthed? How do we guarantee King's College that King's College continues to produce the highest quality achievers to bring about the much desired catapult of our country into the League of Developed Nations? Much of the answers to these questions will apply to the broader Nigerian educational constituency. And I'm pleased that the King's College Old Boys Association has decided to confront the issue of education in Nigeria. I have no doubt from the pedigree of speakers and discussants on this program that much value will emerge today. I'm also confident that the ideas that are shared today will not die here. The federal government is interested in the outcome of your deliberation. I congratulate King's College on its 111th Founders Day and wish all Kingsmen and friends of King's College a very happy celebration. I bring greetings from Mr. President, His Excellency President Muhammadu Buhari. He sends his best wishes for a very successful celebration. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity, and I wish you happy deliberations. Floriad.
Floriad. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please a better round of applause. Thank you so much. Yes, a brief recitation of Ms. Amina Mohammed. Ms. Amina J. Mohammed is the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations and Chair of the United Nations Sustainable Development Group. Prior to her appointment, Ms. Mohammed served as Minister of Environment of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, where she steered the country's efforts on climate action and efforts to protect the natural environment. Ms. Mohammed first joined the United Nations in 2012 as Special Advisor to former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, with the responsibility for post-2015 development planning. She led the process that resulted in global agreement around the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the creation of the Sustainable Development Goals. Ms. Mohammed began a career working on the design of schools and clinics in Nigeria. She served as an advocate focused on increasing access to education and other social services before moving into the public sector, where she rose to the position of the advisor to 3 successful presidents on poverty, public sector reform, and sustainable development. Ms. Mohammed has been conferred several honorary doctorate and has served as an adjunct professor lecturing on international development. The recipient of the various global awards, Ms. Mohammed has served on numerous international advisory boards and panels. She is the mother of 6 and has 2 grandchildren. Please, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, help me put your hands together as I invite Ms. Mohammed for our lecture.
Your Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Excellencies, Your Royal Highness, Chairman of the King's College, the All Boys Association, ladies and gentlemen, and many friends. Allow me to begin by congratulating the King's College trustees, the Executive Committee, and the members for placing the transformation of education at the center of this 111th Founders' Day lecture. The question has never been more relevant. The COVID-19 pandemic is a crisis unlike any in our lifetime. It's become clear early on that the pandemic was more than just a health crisis. It's a socioeconomic crisis that has upended the global economy with the loss of millions of jobs, school closures that have impacted education adversely, and reversed development gains made in the last 10 years. Every country, community, and family has been affected by the pandemic. At the height of the crisis, 1.6 billion students in over 190 countries have been affected at the same time. In response to the pandemic, Nigeria approved over 2.3 trillion naira as a stimulus package to support economic recovery, and in the Economic Sustainability Plan, allocated resources for boosting broadband for education and minimizing the disruption of COVID. This is really commendable. But the socioeconomic impact of COVID on Nigeria's education system and the shift to remote learning has unmasked substantial inequities and gaps in the education sector. This is the case in many other countries, as globally we have witnessed an exacerbation of exclusion. According to UNESCO, about 40% of low and middle income countries have not been able to support disadvantaged learners during the school shutdowns. This comes in addition to the 258 million children and youth who were already out of school before the pandemic. Today, the education crisis has deepened. A recent report from UNICEF estimates that at least 460 million school children worldwide were not reached by digital and broadcast remote learning programs enacted to counter school closures. This is a global crisis, not just one that is hitting the global south. And it mirrors the global digital gap. Half the world's population is still without access to the internet, including to teachers and learners. The longer schools remain closed, the higher the risk. Today, 24 million learners globally, from pre-primary to tertiary, are at risk of not returning to study. This means 5.9 million learners in sub-Saharan Africa may never return to schools. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, we are at a turning point. We must raise our ambitions and use recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic as an opportunity to build a better world. We have an opportunity to reimagine education into the kind of schooling that will strengthen inclusion, resilience, and peace, and lead to the greening of our economies. We are seeing some of these tailor-made responses and global solutions to the education crisis in the making. Distance learning has never evolved at such speed. Everywhere, we're seeing hybrid approaches to remote learning, even in advanced economies, to fit no-tech, low-tech, or high-tech environments. This involves national online learning programs, as well as dedicated radio and TV programming for take-home material. As we move forward, scaling up of infrastructure for connectivity will be crucial. Governments are already planning the future along these lines. This requires not only adequate infrastructure and devices, but also access to digitalized curricula, digital skills training for teachers and students, and measures to protect privacy. The crisis has also made everyone recognize that the center of any educational process is the human relationship between a student and a teacher. We have witnessed so many teachers on the front lines acting heroically to maintain bonds with their students, from using messaging apps to taking homework to remote areas while upgrading their own skills and learning from their peers. The teaching profession needs a social upgrade for formal, basic and tertiary education. We can't expect the learning crisis to abate without trained and motivated teachers. The education systems best prepared for the uncertain future will be those that are capable of valuing their teachers, granting them more freedom and autonomy, and giving them the conditions to work collaboratively. Education and learning also needs to enter a new era, shifting from a focus on formal education to skills acquisition. Education needs to respond to different skill requirements, as future generations will have more than just one profession in their lifetime and more than just one career. With the global pandemic, technology has taken up at a speed and scale never witnessed before. We need to harness this technology momentum to deliver for the most marginalized. We need technology to be accessible to the most vulnerable children in our societies. And we need technology to be accessible to our teachers, the fountains of knowledge. We need technology to rapidly collect and analyze data that ensures we don't leave anyone behind. Open educational resources and open access digital tools must be supported. Education cannot be dependent on digital platforms controlled by private companies, as UNESCO's Futures of Education Commission stated recently. In many ways, this crisis has brought a reality check on recurrent debates of the past years. Some had feared that teachers would be replaced by technology. This crisis has revealed the paramount influence of the human factor, human interaction. Putting resources into digital learning and training for young people is an essential investment in building social cohesion and in reducing the unsustainable inequalities that are blocking human development, stability, and economic growth. Others had considered education systems resistant to change and inherently conservative. Now see how adaptive they can be. From the outset, the United Nations has warned that increased inequality and exclusion could be one of the most damaging consequences to this global pandemic. We have pushed for action so that learning never stops. Last month, the UN Secretary General issued a policy brief on COVID-19 and education with policy solutions to support governments during and beyond the crisis. UNESCO's Global Education Coalition is supporting ministries of education around the world to design and scale up the programs. And the UN has issued guidance on the reopening of schools because getting students back into schools and learning institutions as safely as possible must be a top priority for students and for teachers. The future of education and the future of society are inextricably linked. It will take top political leadership to protect and to prioritize education going forward. Economists have long believed that investments in education or human capital are a driving force for economic growth. However, children and youth face a deeply uncertain future. Education must be a pillar of the recovery, included in stimulus packages and protected from domestic and aid budget cuts. Progress made over decades in expanding education. We now have an opportunity to build back stronger with more solidarity, to make education systems more inclusive, flexible, and resilient to future shocks. Education can save the future and shape a better world. It can empower every child and young person to build a more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable world that in particular leaves no one behind. This is a challenge for you, for me, and for the collective whole. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amina Mohammed, for a most inspiring lecture. A lot of food for thought from all the presentations so far. But before we go on, I'd like to invite the 14th Emir of Kano, His Highness Muhammadu Sanusi II, a distinguished old boy and a member of our Board of Trustees, to give some remarks and a vote of thanks to our distinguished speakers. Your Highness.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, KCOBA, Haji Kashim Ibrahim Imam. Let me start by wishing you speedy recovery. I was not aware at all that you had an accident until today. I've been out of the country. Your Excellency, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Your Excellency, my sister Hajia Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Your Excellency, the Chief of Staff, Professor Ibrahim Gambari, Chairman, KCOBA Board of Trustees, President and EXCO members, colleagues, laureates, all from a very proud King's College and very proud Hyde Johnson's House Old Boy. Let me begin by thanking His Excellency, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, for making the time to be with us today. I know his schedule has been extremely busy. Let me also thank Hajia Amina Mohammed. When I spoke to her, I'm sure you've noticed that I've been absent in a number of old Founders Day lectures, partly because King's College Week is always the same week as United Nations General Assembly Week. And being a UN SDG advocate, I'm involved in UN meetings. In fact, today at 2 p.m., both Amina and myself were supposed to be at a UN meeting. So she couldn't be here physically, but still agreed to make that recording. I thank her very much for making that time. Perhaps my few remarks would be to remind all of us that today at 2 p.m., a movie premiered called Nations United. And for those of you who followed the Secretary General's speech yesterday at the SDG moment, which is the first in the UN Decade of Action, you probably would be, like me, alarmed at how far Africa is when it comes to sustainable development goals. This is, of course, a matter that's been compounded by COVID, as Amina has said. But even before COVID, countries like Nigeria have been far, far behind the trajectory and looking very, very unlikely to meet the world goals. My remark to all of us in King's College is to say we need to step up and be part of this conversation. Education is extremely important, especially the education of the girl child. I have always said that if we focused on educating children, especially the girls, we would make the greatest progress in a large number of SDGs, from food security and nutrition to healthcare, infant mortality to gender equality and so on. But what I hope we will see is more old boys of King's College rising up and being part of a global conversation that is rising. What is our voice in the questions around, for example, gender violence, gender inequality, abuse of women? What is our voice in terms of giving access to education to the poor rural girl child? What is our voice in terms of trying to build institutions and good governance and the fight against corruption? Without these, we cannot address individual elements of the SDGs. We need to have a holistic approach. What is our voice around climate change, carbon emissions, environmental degradation in different parts of the country? All of these have been responsible for some of the insecurity we've seen. All of these have been responsible for some of the economic problems and difficulties that we have seen. What is our voice in calling on the world to look at the financial position of Africa? Huge debt burdens, weak fiscal positions, massive requirements for infrastructure and investment in order to face these challenges. The federal government of Nigeria has started its economic sustainability program to counteract the impact of COVID. I'm sure we've all studied that program. What we would like to do is have an input to make sure that that program is actually tied to SDGs. So for example, huge investments in broadband technology. As we partner with Google and Facebook and all these internationals, how do we leverage broadband, not just to provide an avenue for making telephone calls and sending WhatsApp messages, but for delivering education and healthcare to the rural poor? These are the kinds of thoughts that we need. These are the kinds of visions that we need. And it is no longer possible for us to sit down in one corner, send our children to the best schools and preach. We need to be part of this global advocacy. We need to be part of this national conversation. We need to set the pace for what this country needs to do if in 2030 and 2040, the next generation is going to thank us and not look back and say that we betrayed them and deny them access to growth and development. So these are my few remarks. I have little to add to the brilliant statements that have been made by the Vice President, by the Chief of Staff, and by the Deputy Secretary General. I would like to wish all of us a very successful and happy King's Week. I would also urge all of you to look at this movie, Nations United, which premiered at 2 p.m. today. So after this, you'll probably find it on the UN websites, on Facebook, on WhatsApp. It's extremely important and a wake-up call to the challenges that we have in Africa. Many times we're in Nigeria, but we do not know how the people of Nigeria who are living in rural poverty actually live. Many of us live in Africa, but we are living in a bubble. It's important to look at these things, to be aware of how our populace is living, and to prick our conscience and make sure that we become more and more determined, more and more involved in these questions of development, these questions of poverty, these questions of governance, and these questions of security. King's College has a role to play. We have values to share. We have privileges that we have earned, and it is now time to pay back. As our school song says, we must focus on giving service to the living and honor to our dead. With these words, I'd like to thank you all and wish you a successful conference. Thank the minister, thank Professor Bayomi. Many of you KCOBs out there are doing us proud. The Vice President, for the purpose of today, can be an honorary King's College boy, and maybe in the future, because he's smart enough to have gone through King's College. So let us please adopt him and stop referring to him as an Igbobi boy. And I'm sure he'd be very proud to call himself a KCOB. Thank you very much. And if we're called, I see you out there. QC girls have remained supportive. Thank you for your continuing support. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, KCOBs. Oh, somebody is asking what was the name of the movie I mentioned. The name of the movie is Nations United, by the United Nations.
Thank you very much, Your Highness. Another round of applause for His Highness, the 14th Emir of Kano. We're now about to move into our panel discussions, but before I hand over the mic to Pastor Itwa for the moderation of that, I'd like to just quickly recognize three personalities that are here with us. Firstly, Yomi Badejo Okusoya, representing the president of the Igbobi College All Boys Association. A round of applause for him, please. We also have Mr. Kayode Adekunle of the Igbobi College All Boys Association, here as part of the two-man delegation. Additionally, a round of applause, thank you. Dr. Mrs. TFO Yakubu Oyinloye, Director Principal, Queen's College, Lagos, and Chair of Chairs of Principals of the 104 Federal Unity Colleges. You're very welcome, madam. Thank you. I'd like to now hand over to Pastor Itwa to introduce our distinguished panelists for the session to discuss the lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you very much, Ede. Thank you for a job well done thus far. I want to thank and recognize again all our distinguished speakers, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and also Ms. Amina Mohammed for being part of this great occasion, and of course, His Excellency Alhaji Agbola Gambari. We now want to go to discuss what our erudite speakers have spoken and to see which way forward really for education in Nigeria. The Honorable Vice President stated clearly that education was a bastion of strength, bastion of development, bastion of people making progress in various aspects of their lives, and the quality of education determines the future. And we need to lay a lot of emphasis on the methods by which we raise our children. And we cannot afford to have our society to be backward. Ms. Amina Mohammed says that the United Nations is considering various ways of stimulating education, various ways of making sure that education is an integral part of societal development, springing up questions that we need to ask ourselves and ensuring that in the future, education consistently remains in the front burner of our lives. She says education can save the future. Education can save the future and empower every child and young person to be more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable in this world, leaving no one behind, leaving no one behind. And part of the challenges of development, even in Nigeria today, is the state and the manner in which we have received our education. On our panelists, distinguished set of panelists today, very, very carefully chosen to bring to bear different aspects of education and different aspects of the challenges of education, and starting in no particular order, but recognizing ladies first. Please welcome with me Mrs. Ifweko Omoigwe Okaro, President, Queen's College All Girls Association, joining us live from Abuja. Let us give her a round of applause. And I think she had about 3 of her brothers, very good Ewas, passed through King's College. 4 of her brothers passed through King's College. So she's almost a King's College girl herself. Let us also welcome the Honorable Justice Adeniyi Ademola, retired, President of St. Gregory's College Old Boys Association. Justice Ademola, please. Let's give him a round of applause. Fresh from the battlefield of the Nigerian Bar Association and coming back with laurels of victory, His Excellency, the President of the NBA and a distinguished old boy of King's College, Mr. Olumide Akpata. Please welcome the champion. Also here in his own capacity and representing also Mr. Chukwuemeka Nwajuba, the Minister of State for Education. Please welcome the owners of King's College, Architect Sonny S.T. Echono, Permanent Secretary, the Federal Ministry of Education. Please, let's give him a round of applause so that they will spend more money in King's College. Please keep clapping for them. Professor Akin Abayomi has had to leave. You would know that he's championing the COVID response along with the governor of Lagos State. So let us recognize him in absentia. If he's able to hook on from wherever he is, he will do so and he will share with us. Also on the panel is Mr. Akim Adeniji Adele, the former Chief Technology Officer of Microsoft. The former Chief Technology Officer of Microsoft. He will also be joining us live via Zoom or virtually. Last but not the least is a gentleman who, if they had told me in King's College that he would join the army, I say is impossible. We used to call him Obabs in those days. And I still notice he draws with his left hand. He was a great artist in King's College and a member of my brother's set. Please welcome with me His Excellency Major General retired Babagana Obabs Mongono, the National Security Advisor, who has taken time to come all the way from India this morning to be part of this very, very great King's Week. So I'm going to be starting with Mrs. Ifweko Omoigwe Okaro, and I'm going to be asking her to please give us some indicative direction as to her thoughts on the state and quality of education in Nigeria and what the Queen's College All Girls Association are doing to strengthen and deepen the quality of education in Queen's College and also in Nigeria. Mrs. Omoigwe Okaro, please, if welcome.
Thank you very much, moderator, Itra. First of all, I'd like to thank Queen's College Old Boys Association, before responding to your question, for being a brother in the true sense of the word, for inviting us, for supporting us. When we had to go to meet the Prime Minister of Education, you all came together with us, for including us anytime you're thinking of your programs, and for thinking of us. And by thinking of us, let me say that you think of women, you think of the girl child, because Queen's College, perhaps one of the oldest girls' schools in Nigeria, founded in 1927, represents perhaps one of the largest, the fundamental bastions of girl child education. And I think it's important for us to put in perspective whatever I say in that context. I'd like to also thank King's College Old Boys Association for focusing on supporting us in reducing the level of enrollment, as was mentioned in the speech of the president. And also, surprisingly, I didn't realize it was the King's College Old Boys Association for enabling distance learning platform for Queen's College girls during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, some of these things suggest what I'm going to be talking about, because a lot of the issues that have been raised by the president are very similar to the issues that Queen's College faces. And so I'm going to dwell on the issues we face today, which are very similar, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But I think just like the Vice President has said, to also focus on the future, where do we want to be? And in talking about where we want to be, I would also like to thank the Vice President for focusing us on the importance of people, and that is our greatest endowment. And as simple as that statement may look, it's important that we emphasize it, because it looks like it's an area that, much as we say it, in terms of the actions that we take, I don't think we've done enough in really realizing that people are our endowment. And I'll come to that in talking about Queen's College and in talking about the future. I also like to thank the UN SecGen, my very big sister, for what you paraphrased, talking about how education can save the future. And again, all this to underscore the importance of education. And of course, the Chief of Staff, to the President, for challenging us to think of how we can recreate, even be better than what we were in the past. But I think my greatest thank you, in addition to everybody else, would be to His Royal Highness for bringing up the education of the girl child, and to talk about the need to have a voice, in gender violence, in abuse of women. And I'd like to tell you why, so that you put in context again what I'm going to be talking about in Queen's College. When we discuss the 21st century skills general, and that seems to be a lot of the focus generally in conversations, in reports, we're talking about critical thinking skills, we're talking about creativity, we're talking about problem solving, we're talking about communication, we're talking about global citizenship. But I don't think we spend enough time talking about the behaviors that help drive these skills. And I'd like to suggest a few of such behaviors, and why what I like to talk about in Queen's College, brings this to the fore. And one of the behaviors, for example, that will drive creativity is curiosity. And for you to be naturally curious, you need to be encouraged. You need to feel a level of self-confidence that you can ask questions, that you can speak up. And that when you speak up, you are not turned down. Or somebody somewhere is not saying, oh, you are a woman, or somebody somewhere is saying that, what is your place, or you're too young to talk. Those are things that focusing on the school system alone tells us that it's not the school system alone that will give us the kind of education that will give us these critical skills. It's also our parents. It's also ensuring that the teachers themselves understand that these skills are important, and not just the skills, the academic skills that they bring to bear, because it will appear that we're rated more on those issues and less on these behaviors. And the behavior and courage and self-confidence and self-worth. You know, these are very important variables, which for some of us we took for granted because that was the environment in which we all grew up in. And also, and I believe the Vice President mentioned it when he was listing the different things that will make people empowered, the need for inclusion in every single sphere of life. So let me come back to Queen's College. So I put it in, and this is just a context. Now for Queen's College has said about 3,600. We're closer to pretty much about the same number, just about the 4,000. But the difference between King's College and Queen's College is King's College has had the benefit of having a different space for an arm of their school. And so you have a much larger space than you have today. Now contrast it with Queen's College, which again is the bastion of girl child education. We're in the same space that I was in over 40 years ago. We're in the same space that those of my seniors were in 60 years ago. And at that time, they were just, for example, in my set, in fact, some of my seniors would tell that our set was even too large. There were just 30 children in a class, 60 in all, and the entire school probably about 400. The entire school right now is, at that time, is less than the number of students, sorry, is less than the number of students in one year of school. So it's difficult to be able to expect, because the education we're talking about is really not just, in addition to the content of the course, it's also about the environment. It's also about space. It's also about creating an infrastructure that people go to learn. The old girls are supporting the school every day, working with the teachers, the PTA also to support the schools. But I guess the question that comes to all this, that also comes to the fore of members of the association. What is the long-term plan? And if indeed education is so important, we really need to be more urgent and more decisive on these issues than we have been in the past. We've been discussing PPP. For example, I remember ever since Obiora Ezekwesili was the Minister of Education, that was a topic that was on the table, and that's probably about 10 years ago. I think we need to put to action the concerns we have and actually do something about it. And one thing I like to suggest, and I'm just doing this because I have a very short period of time to talk about it, but one thing I like to suggest is we should have a presidential committee that takes this as urgent, where you have digital economy and communications as a part of it, because you're looking at the communications connectivity, making it affordable to parents, to teachers to be able to log on. So you're not dependent only on one person, and the inclusivity where people in the rural areas can have access without having to come to school will be kind of things that we put on the table. In that committee, you have the Ministry of Education, because you're looking at content, curriculum, to include character, to include teacher development, how we're developing our teachers. A situation where the PTA have to be paying for teachers, and sometimes you're paying for 80 teachers and you're paying 30,000 naira a month for teachers that probably have spent years in school. We're not rewarding the teachers enough. So you have that. You should also have in that same committee, Ministry of Health, to look at issues, and if it's not health, any other social issues that are related to that, so that we can really deal with what are the issues around gender-based violence. Can we put a policy in place, directives, and how do we handle, because gender-based violence is both harassment, assault, violence, and assault. What is assault? When we talk about assault, sometimes it's not even necessary that you beat somebody, but if you talk to somebody in a way that is degrading and the child feels degraded, which affects the child's self-worth, then it falls under that policy. And how do we deal with such issues? And do we have such a policy? Shouldn't we put that policy in place? So I think it is time for us to really set a goal, set a timeline. And let's say by the end of this year, we're very definitive. And like I've mentioned to President King's College Old Boys, they're talking about being ready. The association, subject to, of course, all the directives that we get from the Ministry of Education supporting us, we're also ready to support the school and to support the school get to this level. But we need to have that enabling environment, an enabling framework that will make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let us give Mrs. Omoegui Okaru a very, very warm round of applause. She has joined issues with both the Vice President and Ms. Mohammed on their thoughts, and especially with HRH Sanusi on his issue of the girl-child education. But she's been very, very passionate about the issue of funding of schools, the overcrowding of schools, especially in Queen's College and King's College, the setting up of a presidential committee that will take an urgent look at content, curriculum, character, and set a goal wherein we can generally improve education. I'd like to hand the mic over to the Honorable Justice Adeniyi Adetokunbo Ademola, the president of the St. Gregory's College Old Boys Association, driving through Obalende, well, maybe Ikoyi, okay, Ikoyi, Southwest Ikoyi, sorry, Southwest Ikoyi. I beg your pardon, I'm sorry. Southwest Ikoyi, Southwest Ikoyi. I see that you guys have done phenomenal work. Honestly, we need to give St. Gregory's a round of applause, a round of applause. You've done phenomenal work in upgrading the standards of the school. And I know that school used to belong to Lagos State government. Well, it belonged to the Catholics. Then the Lagos State government took it over. It wasn't looking so good. But over the last few years, you've done exceptionally well with the school. Please share with us your experiences, what you had to go through, and how you've been able to try and make St. Gregory's look almost like King's College. You can speak from there, you can speak from there, whichever way is comfortable for you. You can go there and speak, but then you have about 2 minutes, please. You have a mic. Please unmute his mic.
Because KC boys are at it again when it comes to Gregorians. When I came in, my dear Aburo, he was saying something about off school and something like that. I don't know who he was talking about, but don't let me waste time. You gave Queen's College more than 2 minutes, but St. Gregory's, you said, you gave them more than 2 minutes, but St. Gregory's, you said 2 minutes. Okay, I'll be very brief. First and foremost, congratulations on your 111th Annual Founders Day. It's great to be here, especially as you are junior brothers. St. Gregory's was established 12th of March, 1882. So you can see, I think we're 138. We've even almost forgotten how many years we are now. But it is good to be here. I wish you all the very best. In fact, I must say that I have a little connection with you, as you all know, from my grandfather to my father. My grandfather was in St. Gregory's College. Then we then loaned him to King's College. Then from there, his own son came to King's College. I think after some time, when they appraised the situation, they said, well, we've looked at both very well. You better come to the best school, go to St. Gregory's College once and for all. So let me get back on track with you. As for St. Gregory's College, you said it all. St. Gregory's College was taken over with other schools in the 1970s, initially with the military, then in the 80s, along with other private schools, Catholic schools, the other legacy schools, Igbobi College, Baptist Academy, CMS, etc. And I'm sure by the time it was the 1980s, you could see what a mess they had made of the educational system of all these schools. King's College was covered. You know, King's College was a federal government college. So I don't think where they've got to now, we had got there almost years ago. So I'll tell you what we did that we moved forward with. After the military, in the 70s and the early 80s, what was decided at the last, when the military were in Lagos State, because St. Gregory's was under Lagos State government, we had the authorities allow the Roman Catholic missionaries, they own St. Gregory's College, St. Finbar's, etc. And you will notice that in most cases where the Catholic schools, the missionaries handle, they're usually about the best. I'm not saying because I am from there. I happen to have even gone to government college, but I'll tell you that a bit later. Now, in respect of St. Gregory's College, as far back as the 1970s and the 80s, when eventually Father Usu was appointed to be the chaplain, he, as well as the principal at the material time, late Mr. Omoera. Most of you would know him. He was St. Finbar's College principal also. He was in charge of St. Gregory's College. What we did basically was to get what we did. We evolved this PPP that you talk about, public participation and private hands in it, St. Gregory's College. The old boys of the school, quite a number of them, donated funds. They donated their time to get the school back to its deplorable state. The laboratories, the chapels, the libraries, etc. That was what the old boys did and had played a significant role right from the right from the 70s to the 80s. Mind you, whilst that was going on, His Eminence, Bishop Okoje and Lady Alakije and Mr. Williams and others also took the step, I think, which accelerated the position St. Gregory's in and other private schools, was to take them to court. And eventually, when they got judgments on them in the Court of Appeal, as well as the political will of those who were in the helms of affairs in Lagos State, they handed over the schools back to St. Gregory's College. If you look at St. Gregory's College now, practically all the major structures there were built by old boys. If you look at the labs, we have, a lot of you know Chief Omola Ale. He made sure he equipped that place. Same with the Maji Ekodumi Foundation. What I'm saying is this. So this PPP, it has various forms. You can cooperate with the government. It can be a joint effort. Sometimes you have to hit a balance. Sometimes PPP, because people do not all have a consensus on that, it could be private participation. In the case of St. Gregory's College, that is what it has been. And that is what has made it to be the position it is. The old boys, the various sets in the schools, right from even those ones who are passing out now, they've contributed towards their alma mater. It is important that after what had happened, that the quality of the school, the lifestyle, and the moral decadence which it had experienced had to be removed. It is very, very also important that though it's a PPP approach, it is a different aspect. Most people are used to the one by the government and private hands. In this one, this is another one, private hands. St. Gregory's College, basically a lot of the things that we need now, apart from obviously with the Catholic mission there, a lot of things there are put in by the old boys over the years. You mentioned them, all the big important people in society. That is what they have been doing. If you look at the lab, like I mentioned, you look at the library, we have the stadium, the fields that we have, which is the best. I'm sure King's College boys always come and play football on Sunday on that our pitch. We have one of the best pitches around, and we have a lot of, it's not because we're always beating you in football anyway, so you should know that. So we have a lot from the PPP aspect from the old boys in particular, and that is what has really helped St. Gregory's College. This is highly recommended for other places. I notice also, I should not only mention St. Gregory's College in that aspect, even in Government College Ibadan, where I went for my A-levels, a lot of the old boys associations, they have put in staggering amounts. As of 2 years ago, we put in 500 million to build 2 houses in Government College Ibadan, 2 out of the 5. Thank God we are still, the Old Boys Association are still doing that, because that is the only way you can move forward. And another important aspect is the quality of education. The teachers that we have, it's no use having students there. If the quality of the teachers is 0, then you're just wasting your time. You have to put a lot of emphasis on that. There are a lot of, I believe, foundations who have assisted and who can be assisted in that aspect. If you are waiting for the government to do anything, I think you may wait forever. That is the way I see it. The United Nations recommended 26% of our budget to be assigned to education. But in Nigeria, in the last few years, I don't think we've made up to 6 to 8%. The PAMSEC is here to confirm what paltry percentage they have got to. And without education, this issue of technology and all these things you are talking about, we are going nowhere. The world is moving. If your education is so poor, then your chances of even upgrading to the next level, which a lot of countries are doing, would be a problem for you. It is imperative that you do that. That is what we have done in St. Gregory's College. The emphasis, that aspect of the PPP with laying back on the old boys. And also, we've also decided that companies should start adopting some of these schools, whether it's even at the primary or the secondary, or even at the tertiary level, to assist these colleges, because finance is very important. We have to invest. You need hostels. You need science labs. Of course, you need your chapel there. You need your libraries. You need so many things. So with that aspect of that, we also rely on also companies from outside, old boys especially. It may not even be old boys, banks, insurance companies. That is the way we want to move forward. And we believe that with that, with that route, we shall continue to maintain St. Gregory's College at its premier position as it is. Up, Gregs. Sorry for spoiling your birthday.
Thank you very much, my God. Thank you for looking after my sister, Labo. Clap for him, baby. Thank you, Honorable Justice Ademola, for that very, very insightful discussion. I'm glad that your father was a King's College old boy. Therefore, some of those rustic and outlandish behavior. I'm sorry. For those who are online, if you have questions, please put in your questions into the whatever it is called. Just put in upgrade your questions so that we can pick up those questions. There will be time for questions and answers. And those of us who are here physically, please write your questions, hand them over to any of the ushers so that we can take those questions as we go along. We may not have time for too many questions because the day is running very fast. And I must appeal to our panelists at this time to keep their discourse as short as possible, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. I'd like to also welcome joining us virtually two of our old emeritus presidents of the KCOB, Chief Sonny Kuku, Chief Dr. Sonny Kuku. Please let's give him a round of applause joining us virtually. And also, I'm sure that Hakeem Bello Osage is in England. He did promise me that he'll be on the platform also. Let's give him a round of applause. I think I'm now going to call on Major General Babagana Mongono, OBABS, to give a military response to this St. Gregory's boy. Thank you very much. You can sit here.
Thank you very much, Itwa. Can you hear me, gentlemen and ladies? Okay, thank you very much. Before I make my intervention, I would like to say something. It's unfortunate that His Highness Emir Sanusi, Lamido Sanusi, is not here with us. But let me just say, for all those noise makers from Hyde Johnson's house, particularly the one sitting on my immediate right, I just want to remind you that we're all seated directly under Harman's house now. Harman's is on top of us.
When a man has a gun, you have to forgive him. You have to behave. A gun is greater than half. So let me just gentle.
Let me just start by saying that all that has been said, especially starting from His Excellency the Vice President to Amina Mohammed, to my sister Ifoeko, and indeed our colleagues here, goes to show one fact, the importance of one issue, and that is education in itself. The importance, the premium placed on education by all societies, whether undeveloped, underdeveloped, developing, or developed, remains the same. For any society to progress up to the level of being able to be self-sufficient in terms of securing itself physically, emotionally, or otherwise, it is important to understand that the building blocks of development, of progress, all must be done, must be chosen, bearing in mind the significance of education. Education and security are inexorably linked to such an extent that in today's situation, we notice that there is a change in the nature of threats, challenges faced by mankind, to the extent that this change has been illuminated, firstly, by the fact that the traditional threats are gradually receding into the background. The new threats, whether directly or innocuously or inadvertently, are as a consequence of, one, the changing nature of society, mankind's desires, needs, and so on and so forth. So we can see now, especially in the 21st century, that there is an emergence, probably as a result of the collapse of the Iron Curtain and the emergence of a unipolar world. Threats have changed now. The traditional threats we were used to, that is interstate conflicts, are no longer the threats we are facing today. The threats we are facing are much more complex. They are more complicated than ever before. And that in itself requires that the means, the acts that are necessary to overcome, to suppress the type of challenges we have to be more sophisticated. And that is why education, primarily, not just for the security agencies, but for society in itself, the collective nature of this enterprise in securing ourselves is such that we need to improve on human capital. And it is that human capital that we need to use to actualize our latent potentials, those dormant issues that need to be awakened for us to achieve a more secure society. Therefore, even security agencies today are different from what they used to be a couple of decades ago. There is a desperation for acquiring greater knowledge, and that knowledge tends to be translated in practical terms. So I think what we need to do is to understand that it is not just the traditional institutions or the instruments used by the state to assert its will, to enforce its will, that are important today. Equally important is the larger society, which has to link with these security agencies to fight this enemy, whether seen or unseen. The important thing is that our enemy today is much more sophisticated, is much more cunning, and therefore whatever he applies is as a direct consequence of some form of education. Forget that Boko Haram is made up of people who are illiterate, but they are also literate in a particular way. And this is where the collective effort of society in gaining greater, education is required. I think I'll stop at this point. Thank you.
Let's please give this Haman's boy a round of applause. He says I'm an Ewa, don't mind him. Former Ewa. Also joining us live is Dr. Kalu Idika Kalu, who sends his greetings and best wishes. He's also a past president of the KCOBA and former Minister of Finance of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Can I please ask that we tune to Mr. Hakeem Adeniji Adele, the former technology officer of Microsoft, to share to share with us his ideas on technology. OBABS has said that there must be a premium placed on it, that we must ensure that we are well educated to secure our society, and we must ensure that the threats to education, the threats to society, because the must improve human capital to secure our society. Let's hear from Mr. Hakeem Adeniji Adele, the former Chief Technology Officer of Microsoft, to give us a dimension as to what role technology will play in the future. Mr. Adeniji Adele.
Thank you so much, Pastor. Mr. Vice President, His Royal Highness, organizers of King's Week, Floret to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to contribute. Well, as a technologist, I've actively participated in enabling education in many parts of the world. I believe that our goal is to empower the students of today to create the world of tomorrow. In education, this is more than just providing cheap new toys to play and learn with. The hope is really to create sustainable change in the way students are educated that will actually give them the tools they need to handle the world they live in today, and also prepare them to take on the advantages and challenges of tomorrow. We all know that the current reality of today, COVID-19, has exposed what we all knew, the education divide in Nigeria. I'm optimistic it can be reduced. Inaccessibility to digital tools means many children could not follow the curriculum online during the coronavirus crisis. Just to add this, I have a newfound respect for teachers because taking my kids through the classes online and then homework was a revelation. Thank you to the teachers. You see, children in rural and underserved communities in Nigeria have been left behind as they're not equipped to adapt or transition to the new methods of learning. I know that government reforms in the national curriculum will help bridge the gap in inequality, as will the PPPs as well. You see, the current pandemic is revolutionizing digital and online education globally. But kids in the rural and underserved communities in Nigeria today are being left behind. They're not equipped to adapt or transition to the new methods of learning. And I believe in March 2020, the Federal Ministry of Education approved school closures as a response to the pandemic. Some states in the Federation contextualized this. I know with Lagos Ministry of Education, they released a schedule of radio and TV lessons for students in public schools. But it's important to note this, that there was a study where it says that families that earn below 500 Naira per day, and those that face the harsh economic realities due to the few weeks of lockdown we had, cannot purchase these radios or TV. The trade-off is just not possible. A suggestion to this problem was the provision of portable solar radios to help bridge the digital divide. The pandemic has unmasked substantial in the educational sector. Private and non-government sectors are tirelessly working to salvage the situation. However, there's one major issue that I believe may stem from this inequality. These kids who currently cannot keep up with their peers because of inaccessibility to digital tools may never catch up and will continue to feel the effect of this gap, along with the pandemic, especially when it's over. Now, there are measures being taken to help bridge the divide when the urgent needs of the pandemic subsides. They center more along technology, PPPs, and government aid. In a recent study, I'm not sure it was Google or Microsoft, it says that 30% of teachers who are highly motivated to personalize their lessons do not feel they have the time the curriculum and assessment resources, or even the flexibility to do so. I mean, they're motivated, but they don't have the time. Now, with the right technology, schools can modernize their classrooms and also streamline or automate countless administrative tasks to free up teachers' time and also empower them to focus on what matters the most, the students. It is important that while we invest in technologies, a parallel investment in skills development of teachers is required. Even if you give every student a device today, it does not automatically lead to better learning outcomes. You see, what we realize is that when tech initiatives succeed when school leaders focus first on clear learning objectives, and they also support their teachers with professional development, and they put learning in the hands of every student, empowered by technology. Now, digital transformation in education utilizes the investments schools have already made in technology to prepare the students for tomorrow's challenges in new ways. For me, when I think of a modern classroom, I think it empowers you to, first of all, enhance outcomes with student-centered learning. The second is to make the most of classroom time with innovative tools. Now, PPPs can also do more to improve the quality of and increase access to education for poor children in underserved communities. More schools in such areas, especially in Lagos, will go some way to start shifting the teacher-student ratio. I think today it's about 1 to 80. I mean, at points during the past decade from what I read up. The result of new schools will also reduce the burden on teachers who are currently ill-equipped to handle the huge class sizes. At this point, I'd just like to also make a suggestion, which may be controversial, which is, I believe KC should be run by KCOBs to reduce the burden on federal government. Thank you.
Let's give Tiniji Adele a round of applause. It does sound like a king boy. I believe he probably pointed that King's College should be handed over to King's College Old Boys to run. He said it, not I. I don't know why the permanent secretary is looking at me like that. Let me hear from my friend and the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mr. Olumide Akpata.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Pastor Itwa. Thank you very much, Pastor Itwa. Can I be permitted, sir, to preface? I know we're short for time, but can I be permitted to preface my comments with 2 remarks? Firstly, I would like to pay tribute to 2 very inspirational figures in our King's College family. Firstly, to our president, Matawalin Borno, Alhaji Kashim Imam. We've always known that you are committed to the King's College cause, but you have demonstrated this in ways that even has exceeded many of our expectations. We see your cast, the blue cast, and I know we know the challenges you have faced, but that you are here, that you have continued to be committed to our school. We're proud of you, and you are our leader, and we will follow you, sir. Thank you very much. And to my other brother, Pastor Itwa, in the last couple of months, you have inspired us, sir. And I can only tell you that we, your brothers, love you, and we're extremely proud of you and all that you have done. And we pray, I want you to know that we are with you as you walk down this road, sir. God bless you, sir. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. One of my very first engagements after emerging as president of the Nigeria Bar Association. Like a true High Johnson's boy, like a true High J boy, even if the general is looking at me, I will look this way. I went and I brought back the trophy for King's College. And I must place on record the support of King's College Old Boys, lawyers, non-lawyers. It was amazing. And I just pray that the support will continue, even as I lead a team that will attempt to change the narrative in the legal space. And as usual, do King's College proud. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I'm delighted to have been asked to come to make my own interventions with regard to the state of education in our country. The theme of our King's Week, Education, the Way Forward, is, should I say, as we normally say, very appropriate for a time like this. But you know, I think I'm getting tired of appropriate conversations for a time like this. I personally am looking for appropriate action for a time like this. I say this because my sister Ifueko mentioned that it has been 10 years since we've been talking about PPPs. No, Sister Ifueko, it has been 15 years minimum that we have engaged in this particular iteration of this subject. Dr. Leke Oshuni is here. We all lived and we breathed this issue in the years leading to the centenary of King's College. So when I saw that, I was reminded that this is our 111th anniversary. So we have been talking about this issue for about 15 years. So you can understand why I'm a little bit jaded when we talk about the issue of education in Nigeria, because I detect that some of the key stakeholders in this space are not quite keen to move us away from where we are. And so that's a problem to me. We must get the structure right before we even talk about what it is we want to interview. The structure, the model must be right. As many of you know, KC is in my DNA. I owe, like many of us, what I am today to God and to King's College, Lagos, and of course my family. And we worked really hard 15 years ago to try to get government to see that it really has no business in the running of secondary schools. That is my view. It remains my view. And I must say, my Lord, you are most correct, my Lord. It is that PPP model that will work. Now, St. Gregory's College, Obalende, I'm sorry, Southwest Ikoisa, is fortunate, sir, because your own, those who took over Lagos State government were probably easier to deal with, or a combination of circumstances, or made it possible for the state government to return the school to the Catholic Church, who obviously were more amenable to a partnership. On our part, the federal government of Nigeria has not been exactly amenable for that kind of partnership in the way that I would like to see. The King's College Old Boys Association has demonstrated repeatedly its willingness and its ability to collaborate with the federal government of Nigeria in this regard. And I say this from an informed position. I was social secretary of the King's College Old Boys Association. I eventually became general secretary. And all these years we worked hard. We worked with Mrs. Obi Ezekwesili when she was Minister of Education. And that model that she introduced, which I wish we had implemented, is the structure that we need. It was the PPP concessioning model, so that stakeholders in the sector can partake in the running of these schools. Stakeholders like Old Boys Associations, faith-based organizations, and all of that was arranged and put in place by that honorable minister, our dear sister. The only thing that was lacking at that time, which I personally advised on or her about, was the legal underpinning, the legislative underpinning required to ensure that successive governments would not, or successor governments would not throw that arrangement out of the window, which actually became the case when a new government came into power. I say, Honorable our Permanent Secretary, who is here representing the minister, I say this with every sense of responsibility that it is not, the government is not in the business of running secondary schools. I say this, and I don't say it, I don't say it to spark up a controversy, but I'm just stating the fact. And for 3 months, I attended Federal Government College Warri while I was waiting to come to King's College, and because there's no other school to come to anyways. So, and so I'm familiar with our federal government colleges. I was in one of them, and I know what the federal government colleges are today, even with the best of intentions and best efforts. I know what Federal Government College Warri is like today. In those days, when the Unity colleges, we had students from all over the country. Let us not forget why these schools were also set up, Unity schools. We had students from all over the country. Today, most of those schools are in various stages of decay and deterioration. And you find out that because you don't even find in FGC Warri, if you take a poll, you'll find out that most of them, the students are either from Edo or Delta State. That concept of people traveling to other parts of the country, that is dead, is gone. However, I think that government should embrace organizations like the King's College Old Boys Association, who have shown a readiness, who have shown a willingness, who have shown ability to run a school like this. A school like this that is a monument, a school like this that is a source of national pride, a UNESCO heritage institution. We cannot allow it to deteriorate like this. But it's not only about King's College, ladies and gentlemen. It's about education, education of our children. And when we talk about getting the model right and the structure right, it is from the point of view of funding. Where do we get the funding from? And organizations like King's College Old Boys have shown, just as St. Gregory's Old Boys Association showed, we can galvanize the funding. We obviously can galvanize the funding. And then administration, the running of the school. There's no way we will put our monies into ventures like this and will not be given a say in how the school is run. Then there's also the system of learning or teaching, because that is also quite, I think my Lord alluded to this fact, how we run the school, what values, what courses, what are we teaching the students? Values are long gone, or at least are fast eluding us as a society. I have a small crisis on my hands as president of the NBA now. We just had a call to bar ceremony, my Lord, and there are pictures all over the internet of young lawyers wearing the wig and gown in ways that were never contemplated by those who conceived of the idea of wig and gown or a formal outfit for lawyers. Again, we're dealing with that because it is not at the law school or at the university you teach values or you teach young people how to respect constituted authority or how to obey rules and regulations. It is in places like this. It's in the secondary school, it's in the home. So you find out that these young people who are abusing the attire of our profession are blissfully oblivious of their responsibility to the profession because they did not pick it up somewhere along the line in the education chain. Ladies and gentlemen, I belong to that generation that was called, we were called the leaders of tomorrow. And tomorrow has arrived and there's really nothing to lead. And I only want you to begin to think about the day after tomorrow, because that generation coming behind me are even more, they're in a more precarious situation than myself and my generation. And this is because the value system, the role models. And I make this point because that is the role of schools like this. So it's a problem we must look at beyond King's College. That is what parents at home are supposed to do, pass on values, and schools like King's College, Lagos. But you find out that we don't have any more role models. We don't have a system of education that would pass on these values to our younger ones. What we have now as role models are musicians and dodgy politicians. That is what our students, our children have to look to. And it is not as if musicians and dodgy politicians did not exist when we were younger. But we had schools and we had parents who were able to push back and bring forward a counter narrative so that all that the children are hearing is not what we have in the marketplace. Get rich quick or die trying, fake it until you make it. Those are the kind of messages that our children are hearing. And there are no schools. And even at home, the homes and the schools have been degraded. So it is very difficult for the counter narrative to pass on. Finally, the last point I would like to make before I drop the mic is that, as I mentioned to the Honorable Minister at the time, Mrs. Ezekwesili, whatever it is we are doing in our effort or in our bid to partner with government in the running of schools, we must ensure that there is an effective framework, legal framework undergirding that effort. Otherwise, it will come to naught. And so it is important that we do that. There are many, many other jurisdictions where this has been done, many other jurisdictions where PPP model has been adopted. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can learn from them. King's College Old Boys Association, of which I am a proud member, this is not only about King's College. We are born leaders. We have always shown the way. We have always shown the path that should be followed. And we owe it to our country. No matter how difficult this task may seem, no matter how difficult it is to engage all the levers that we need to engage to get government to see this point, we cannot relent. We cannot be weary in well-doing. I encourage our leader, our president, not to let up, because once we can get this model right, it will be replicated all over the country and we can save the system of education in this country and, by extension, save our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear President of the Nigerian Bar Association, a proud King's College and High Johnson's houseboy. Thank you for those warm thoughts. Appropriate action for a time like this. It's time for the key stakeholders to be involved in the running and the management of the school, PPP, and then very importantly, to have the right legal framework to underpin what we're trying to do. I'd like to throw the mic open for Architect Sonny Echono, the Permanent Secretary, the Federal Ministry of Education. A lot of things have been thrown out there. Our sister Ifeko was concerned about the numbers of children in our unity schools. She says like Queen's College, like King's College, have about 3,600 students for facilities that were made for between 400 and 600 students. Justice Ademola has shown us that the Gregorians did it by getting involved in the management and the building of infrastructure, the training of teachers, and so on and so forth. OBABS has told us that education has a premium and we should support education so that his job as security advisor will be made much easier in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And Adediji Adele has given us a lot of emphasis on the need to look forward from a very highly technological perspective. Architect Ochuno, please give us a thinking of how the federal government is looking at these issues, what really can be done, and what the future of education is in Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I noticed from the program that I'll have an opportunity to pay my compliments to our leaders as well as the celebrants. So permit me to skip that aspect right now and use part of that time to reinforce again the theme that run through all the discussions before mine, starting with His Excellency, the Vice President. And that is in an attempt to have a shared acceptance, perhaps even build a national consensus on the pivotal role of education in our national affairs. And I'll start this by also adding a spiritual dimension, because I personally believe that education has proven to be the most reliable pathway in our search for purpose and meaning for human existence. Education equips men and women with skills, knowledge, and the character to access and exploit opportunities. It also offers a shield against the adversities and challenges that we face, and there are a whole lot of them, including but not limited to issues like poverty, issues of development, issues of disease, insecurity that you've heard of, and also issues about the human experience, including, but not things like natural disasters, for example. Why do we build on floodplains? Why can't we keep our drainages free? Through education, we develop the human capital required for the transformation of any society. And how well we do it will address the issues of sustainable and rapid economic growth for our people, the promotion of our culture, our tradition, and values. I'm glad somebody talked about values a lot earlier. It will also address the issues of security. We have to make the right, even if painful, choices. Do we give these kids the skills to find pathways or to find means of sustaining themselves, their families, and also contributing to our economy? Or we wait until out of desperation or hopelessness, they become criminals and we spend money to try and head them in, to try and enforce the law, and so on and so forth. It will address issues of inclusion, whether it is gender-based inclusion, the girl child, or even the rich and the poor, or even those with disabilities, for example. And again, education is the fountain from which the standard of living of a people is defined. So if we have or can build this national consensus, it will influence how we see education as an investment in the future and in the regeneration of society. I know the president of King's College Old Boys will not let me be if I don't talk about PPP, and I will. PPP models have proven, and it is a no-brainer, because by definition, it combines the advantage. It's a risk-sharing model that combines the advantage of government, the stability and the security which it provides, with the resources, the efficiencies and expertise that the private sector bring to the table to achieve optimum results. Governments that adopt PPP realize the obvious, that they cannot find the resources in an atmosphere of competing national needs to adequately fund the key social sectors, particularly education and health. So any government desirous of progress
must welcome the participation of the private sector. It is true that this conversation has been on the table for a while, but I believe all that is required at this point is to sit across the table to work out an arrangement that addresses whatever concerns there are. And definitely there will be concerns. Some of them you alluded to. Will a Kashim Imam be able to attend a school that is privately run? Will the children of the poor from all parts of the country be able to afford a school where people have invested resources in expectation of returns? And these concerns are issues that are not particularly, they're not impossible to overcome. We can have some kind of compromise around them. And this has happened in several other countries, as has been stated by my brother president. So, to your point, the specifics of what you want me to address. What should policy be like going forward? I believe currently we already have a policy that encourages private institutions. We also can move in the public space to address the deficiencies that we have in the public running of institutions. First, the shortage of finance. 2, the rights management. And 3, the opportunities providing access and quality, which are the cardinal principles that the government is pursuing. We want to be able to have inclusive access for all members and all segments of the society, and we want to retain quality by having the right numbers and quality of teachers who are committed, effectively motivated to do so. Can government do it alone? The answer is no. And that is where organizations like the King's College Old Boys and other players in the field will come in. We just need to sit down, agree on the modalities for working this out and ensuring that the interests of all parties, the risks are adequately shared, and the common objective can be achieved. I thank you for the opportunity.
I think you want to do better than that for our honorable permanent secretary. And we will take up your invitation to sit around the table with you on Monday, 9 a.m. Alhaji Kashim Ibrahim, Dr. Oshinuyi, Jani Ibrahim, go and represent us Monday, 9 a.m. to discuss this issue of how we can cooperate with the federal government of Nigeria to better run not just King's College, but every school that has the opportunity to do so. I think we're all agreed that we must improve education in Nigeria. We must address all the various anxieties. We must ensure that there's stability in the institution. And we must also be ready to provide the funding to ensure that these institutions go to where they're supposed to go to. And this is a challenge to all of us King's College Old Boys seated here and also watching live on Zoom, that we must begin to think of dipping our hands a little bit into our pockets, get rid of the apathy that we seem to have when it comes to donating to things in the good old school. Like Olu Akpata said, a lot of us own our foundation, our thoughts, our thinking, and our progression in life to the fundamentals and the values that we're given here at King's College, St. Gregory's Igbobi College, Methodist Boys, and so on and so forth, that have turned out a generation of truly great Nigerians. Queen's College, Queen's School, Holy Child College, and so on and so forth, that have turned out a great generation of great Nigerians. And we must not allow our educational values to slip. Many, many years ago, as a pastor, 3 young boys in my church came to see me, and they said they had issues. And when we had spoken about their issues, I then asked them what they wanted to become in life. And I thought they would say to me, doctor, lawyer, architect, engineer. They would even humor me by saying that I want to be a pastor, just like you. But the answers that I got was a little bit surprising. The first one said I wanted to go to the army. I wanted to go to the army. I think it was in the military era around that time. The second one said I wanted to be an armed robber. And the third one said, I want to be a Yahoo expert. You know, I said, why do you want to be these things? And they said to me, those are the people who seem to be getting on in Nigeria. Yahoo experts. I didn't ask them which school they went to, but I know that none of them went to King's College. I know for sure. We want to welcome some of the members of St. Gregory's Old Boys Association here present. Mr. Benny Grant, the General Secretary. You are most welcome, Mr. Grant. Thank you very much for being here. Mr. Babatunde Abuzo, I think, if I get the spelling right, the Financial Secretary is here with his checkbook to make a donation to King's College and to ask for penance for all their sins, the Financial Secretary, and then Mr. Kenneth Obo, EXCO member of St. Gregory's. You are all welcome. We're going to take very, very briefly, in 5 minutes, just a set of questions. And I'm going to please implore all our panelists to give very short and direct answers to these questions, because I want us to be out of here in another 15 minutes flat for all the things that we need to do. We've run about 2 minutes behind our schedule, and I don't want us to run for more than 12 or 15 minutes behind that schedule, so that we can really prove that we're King's men. There are a few questions here, and I'll just take 3 or 4 of them for people to answer. For the National Security Advisor, there's a big question here, and I want you to go straight to the point. What is government doing with the issue of banditry, herdsmen, killing spree in the north, southern Kaduna, Katsina, and so on and so forth? A dead child cannot get a good education to move the country forward. General Mongono, please. Okay, good. Very straight, direct to the answer, please.
Thank you, Pastor Itua. What the government is trying to do now is actually to look at the involvement of the larger society in the activities of the security agencies, apart from the fact that it is also right now contemplating some changes in the architecture of the security system to involve the wider security organization that is outside the main armed forces and the constabulary forces. Then you also asked about children not being able.
No. It's an adjunct to that question. So what we're doing is to involve the general public. The next question is for my sister, Ifeko. I hope she's still on the platform. And Atta is asking, what do you think about inclusively engaging men on key issues for the SGBs as a way of preventing future challenges of women exclusion in activities? What do you think about engaging men? Ifeko, please.
Thank you. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I think it's something that should be done, and it's something that we currently do. And I mean, that's the question. I think basically to you look for more platforms to do that. But I also like to say that you actually do have men who are supporting this very much so. And there needs to be a lot more reorientation, both of men and women in regard to this area.
Very good. Thank you very much. I think the next question is to my brother, Architect Echono. There's a rapid increase in the nation's population. There's a rapid increase in the nation's population vis-a-vis the demand for education. What is the view of government? What is the thinking of government in terms of planning ahead for this? And also, what is government's policy in respect of vocational and technical education and skill acquisition? A guy called Ojong is asking this question.
Thank you. Indeed, the issue of our exploding numbers addresses the questions, our national resolve in providing access to education for the population. And that's why the three key areas we are focusing on currently is expanding access. How do you expand access? Three things we need to do. The first, we're not going to have enough classrooms for everybody, but we'll need to build additional classrooms. Two, we are going to need additional teachers. But more importantly, we have to leverage on technology to be able to take even education to your homes, your workplaces, and for those who do not have access in terms of the buildings. Secondly, you've asked this question earlier about what will the government plan for this growing population? First, before we talk about our own plans, I also want us as a people to accept the reality that if you grow your population without adequately preparing them, there is no demographic dividends to be gained from it. So we need to, as a people, understand this. Given the challenges we have in providing for everybody, we need to also put a lead, if you like, on how many kids we produce, so we can adequately plan for what we can. Some see it differently, but this is my take, that we have to address both the demand side and the supply side. The supply side is how we get everybody involved, including what we are discussing today, have more providers, not only governments taking up education as its own enterprise, but everybody, social, the private sector, NGOs, everybody should contribute in education. And that way we can provide a larger platform. But we also need to do something about our population growth rate, which is too high for our economy. The second leg of the question, sorry.
Well, there's a throw forward question very quickly. A lady called Furohat is asking, why don't we just bring King's College, both extension and this one, under one roof, by acquiring some of the buildings around King's College here and linking it to this present site? Does it make sense?
Well, we will always prefer to have contiguity, but the reality is that if you explore that option, you're going to see so many other challenges, and it's going to probably cost a humongous amount to get people who are living around here to give off their properties. So maybe even a middle of the road solution might be to think about a new site entirely where you can move everybody and have a contiguous environment. But I must quickly add that what King's College is doing is actually consistent with the national education policy that we created when we adopted the 6-3-3-4 system. We envisaged that we are going to have a separate junior secondary school and a senior secondary school. The two campuses you have allowed you to do that, where you have the junior campus and the senior campus. So it's not altogether a bad model.
Thank you very much. We'll discuss this 9 a.m. on Monday. The last question will be for Olumide Akpata. What do you think the legal underpinning of the PPP should be? What do you think government should put in place for this?
Thank you. First and foremost, when we talk about legal framework or legal underpinning, is a clear articulation of the obligations, the responsibilities of the parties. It is a contract that we're getting into or we're contemplating. And as such, there must be firstly a clear articulation of rights, of obligations, etc. Now, with regard to concessioning of schools, let me put on the hat of the lawyer representing government, for example. My permanent secretary just mentioned that there must be, right, government must have the comfort that whoever our school management authority becomes would key into or will commit to the objectives of government as far as education of the Nigerian child is concerned. Access. So the King's College of my father's time, there was opportunity for everybody to be at King's College, as long as you merited it. King's College of my time, ditto. So whoever is going to be running the schools, take for example, let us call it King's College Education Trust. Let us assume that KCET is the partner that government is engaging with, would have to commit to setting some of those ideals or objectives of government. That is part of the legislative legal framework we're referring to. The contract that are in place. That is on the side of contracting. But now, with regard to ensuring sustainability, there must be passed through our National Assembly, right? Laws that recognize whatever arrangement we come to with regard to the parties. There must be laws that recognize that schools, these school management authorities that we're creating, are legally empowered to run the schools in the manner that has been mutually agreed to by the parties. Now, if that is not in place, anybody, any investor, because we are investors, even if we may not be investing for profit, but we are coming into the process because we want to give of our time, our talent, our treasure, and we want to understand that the law recognizes this kind of arrangement. So that is also critical. And in other jurisdictions, those kind of legislation have been put in place to underpin or to enable the arrangement. There's also the issue of where funding is meant to come from. Now, government on its own will not be able to appropriate for education if it has gone into this kind of partnership without the necessary law being in place to allow it appropriate and essentially hand over funding to third parties, not at the moment recognized by our laws. So essentially, legal framework is what I'm referring to contracting as between the parties to ensure that rights and obligations are clearly articulated and established, and then also that we have laws in place so that the concept that we anticipate is not unknown to law. So that is what I think, that is what I am referring to.
Thank you very much. The federal government, I'm sure you can see that we're prepared for you mentally, we're prepared for you financially, we're prepared for you legally, and we're prepared for you physically. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for a distinguished set of panelists that have robustly discussed this issue of education, the way forward. I want to thank you all, gentlemen and ladies, for being part of this discussion. Let me hand over to the MCs for them to bring this occasion to a close. Let's give the MCs themselves a round of applause so that they will do their work free of charge.
Thank you so much. So please put your hands together for the panelists, please. Can I please also call on the Lagos State Commissioner for Education, Mrs. Folashade Adefisayo, to give a few remarks. She's joining us virtually. A round of applause for her, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I'm told she's not around. I'll hand over the microphone to Mr. Jonah.
Thank you for affording me the opportunity to do the business end of my visit here. His Excellency, the Vice President, the Chief of Staff to Mr. President, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, His Royal Highness, Lamido Sanusi II, the Honorable Minister of State Education and the President of King's College Old Boys Association, the Chair of the Board of Trustees and other trustees present, my co-panelists, the Principal, King's College, and other principals of our Unity Colleges, the Chair of Chair, the management and staff of King's College, and representatives of parents, old students, and all other stakeholders, the gentlemen of the press. I bring you very warm felicitations from Malam Adamu Adamu, who has asked me to specially congratulate you on this very auspicious occasion of your 111th anniversary, Founders Day anniversary. the Minister of State, and the entire education sector felicitate with you on this occasion, and we recognize the role and standing, the stature of King's College as a citadel of learning and a production hub for some of the best minds in our country. This is evident from the fact that even as you reel out your achievements in terms of the accomplishments of your graduates, some of whom are here with us today, and many of whom are serving in the top echelon of our government, we urge you not to dwell in your very rich history and tradition, but open a new leaf to embrace the challenges that the future holds. We recognize the enormous infrastructure deficit and also some of the societal challenges that has found expression within our schools. And we welcome contributions from the King's College Old Boys in resolving some of those. Personally, I came in here with a lot of nostalgia because I recall that in the late 1980s and early 90s, I had the privilege of serving on the King's College Advisory Council under Alhaji Femi Okunu at the time. I represented the interests of the Federal Ministry of Works. I also want to use this opportunity to recognize and appreciate the several generations of architects that had roots from King's College. As your president, I'm very proud of the accomplishments, and that also includes those who veered into other aspects of our national life, including the National Security Advisor. I want to wish you the very best in your celebrations. I ask you to continue to commit to your alma mater in various ways, lending your time and resources. And I also want to commend the organizers for the gesture of inviting and involving the Federal Ministry of Education. Thank you very much.
A round of applause, please. We'd like to get a closing remark from the Deputy President, King's College Old Boys Association, Dr. Leke Oshuni. Please, your hands together for him as he comes on stage. All right, then I'm told that Alhaji Kashim Ibrahim will take the slot. So please, ladies and gentlemen, can you help me put your hands together for him? Keep clapping, ladies and gentlemen. He's an IJ boy, he won't fall. Up IJ.
Laureate, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, His Excellency Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the Chief of Staff to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, our own Professor Ibrahim Gambari, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, my sister Hajia Amina Mohammed, my boss, the PAMSEC of the Federal Minister of Education, architect Echono, who also happens to be the president of the Nigerian Institute of Architects. Please permit me to stand on existing protocols because the day is far spent and we are very determined to end this session as quickly as we can. I and I'm standing in, by the way, for the Deputy President for the duration of my treatment. For as long as I'm wearing this cast, we had agreed between us, he will be the acting president, and I shall be the acting deputy president of the King's College All Boys Association. Now, having said so, I want to share with you the handicaps very briefly, very quickly, of being president of the King's College All Boys Association. The High J boys today, every one of them from Emir Sanusi to the National Security Advisor, General Monguno, to the president of, I'll take that back again. Emir Sanusi, the president of the Nigerian Bar Association, Odo Akpata, and the gentleman from Hammond's House, General Monguno, all took turns intimidating us. And here I am, I'm handicapped simply by virtue of being president of the All Boys Association. I cannot respond on behalf of my house because I'm told that for the duration of my tenure, I belong to all houses. I'm told that I can't be heard, and I want to be heard very clearly. I briefly stated the handicaps of being president of the association. We heard from the boys from High J. We also heard from the boys from the boy from Hammond's House. I'm here. I cannot associate myself with my house, and I will tell you why. I'm told that for the duration of my tenure as president of the All Boys, I belong to all houses. Now, however, I just want to make one very brief statement of fact. During the period that I was here, for 5 years, from 1975 to the year 1980, the houses, the 4 houses were ranked in this order, whether in terms of academics, sports, extracurricular, and other extracurricular activities. May I tell you the ranking, please? I belong to all the houses, so I must share this with you. Mackay was consistently ranked first. And I'm sure Pastor Etua will be very happy to hear this. Hyde Johnson was consistently ranked second. Pence was ranked third. And my brother will not be too happy with me. Hammond's was ranked fourth. I don't know the present situation because I belong to all the houses. Shortly after this also, my classmates will be coming up here. I won't have the privilege of standing alongside them before you on account of the fact that I'm also told that I belong to all sets. So I'm very anxious, very eager to complete my tenure so that I'll go back to Mackay and I'll also go back to my classmates. We listened to 2 very brilliant presentations, and I'm not here to do the vote of thanks. Emir Sanusi had thanked the 2 lead speakers. The General Secretary will come up after me to do the general vote of thanks. However, I'm compelled to acknowledge all the speakers today for very brilliant presentations. I want to single out in particular the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for his most brilliant, most thought-provoking presentation today. I spent 2 hours with him in Abuja in his office, trying to convince him to be physically present here today. I didn't tell him the reason why. He thought that I just wanted him to be physically here to present his lecture. As has been acknowledged by several previous speakers, the VP attended Ibobi College. He was not privileged to have attended King's College, Lagos. No doubt about it, he's a brilliant person. He's a man of great intellect. He is also a pastor, he's a man of God. He's a scholar par excellence. He's a professor of law. But he has one great deficiency, and that is he was not privileged to have attended King's College, Lagos. About 3 years ago, ESCO decided on our Founders Day to honor one outstanding Nigerian with life membership of the King's College All Boys Association. Earlier, Emir Sanusi let the cat out of the bag. So I will just complete the process that he started. It is my singular honor and privilege. It's also my pleasure to announce today that the ESCO of the King's College All Boys Association, as well as the chairman and trustees of King's College Lagos, and the principal, management, staff, and all students of King's College Lagos have collectively decided to confer on His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, life membership of the King's College All Boys Association. We had wanted to do full honors. That was why I took on the assignment of convincing him to come. We wanted full military honors, the cadet unit, the boys brigade, the Boy Scout, our cultural troops. We had wanted to honor him fully. However, he confided in me that in the past 6 months, he had left the vicinity of the villa only twice. And I will tell you what he whispered to me. He's afraid of COVID. So we will have to get another appropriate day to honor the Vice President. Now, very quickly, very briefly, the topic of the day. Everybody has spoken about PPP. I've said over and over that that is just the loan. The ESCO, under my leadership, we have only 1-point agenda, and that agenda is PPP. I'm happy that the representative of the Minister of Education, who in his own right is the Permanent Secretary, Federal Minister of Education, a great friend, is here and is listening to me. May I, on behalf of the students, the ESCO, the trustees of King's College Lagos, announce to you, sir, that we are ready. As the pastor said, we are ready in every sense of the word. We are ready to give of our time. We are ready to give of our intellect. But most importantly, we have very deep pockets. We are also ready to spend money running King's College Lagos. We plead with you. We want you to take this word back to the Honorable Minister and through him to the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, that we, the All Boys of King's College Lagos, want to take over the administration of King's College in a PPP partnership with the Federal Ministry of Education. We have a roadmap terminating 31st of December for us to address all the issues. And these issues have been brilliantly articulated here today. And we are ready to commit to that. We are ready to address those issues, amongst other things, funding, staffing, content, infrastructure, but most importantly, the character of the college. And that is the key reason why we want to enter this partnership with you. When I was admitted to King's College Lagos, in my class, there were just 60 of us. I've been trying to understand what is the miracle. But on average, each state was represented in my class, 3, 4. No state had more than 4 students. And no state had less than 3 students admitted into Form 1. In my class, Mustafa Damchida, Zachary Kolo, Zachary Tata, and my humble self, 4 of us were admitted. And it was the same for all the states of the Federation. Today, this is not the situation at all. And we've been told that this is the concern of government. So we are ready to restore that national character of King's College. And that should be, the same should be applicable to all the federal government colleges. Secondly, I want to give written guarantees in any agreements that we sign that will not turn the college into an elitist institution. So the children of the rich, as well as the poor, those from Corona will have the privilege of attending King's College Lagos, but also those from primary schools in very remote locations spread across the length and breadth of this country will be given equal opportunities to attend King's College Lagos, regardless of the financial status of the parents. I'm fond of telling one story. And at the risk of being very repetitive, I want the PAMSEC to take this away. A student was admitted to King's College Lagos in the year 1972 from a very remote, tiny village somewhere in the state of Kwara. And he wrote the school cert in the year 1976. He had 6 A1 distinctions. A1 in physics, A1 in chemistry, A1 in mathematics, A1 in additional mathematics, and I can go on and on like this. These are courses that I particularly found very difficult during my days as a student in King's College Lagos. But he had 6 distinctions, 6 A1s. And I want to believe that given the opportunity, students from all states of the Federation can easily replicate this. So we are not seeking this opportunity to turn the college into an elitist, high school fees paying institution. To the contrary, we want to restore King's College to what it used to be, at least what we made it here. And we want you to please take this message away with you as you leave. Finally, may I thank everybody for creating time to be with us. I want to thank in particular those from brother institutions. I'm happy that the president of the All Boys Association of St. Gregory's College, His Lordship, Justice Adeni Ademola is here with us. I'm also happy that the Vice President and members of his ESCO, the executive of the All Boys Association of Igbobi College, All Students Association are also here with us. And I want to share this in particular with Justice Ademola. During my time, we used to write 2 common entrance examinations. I had the privilege of doing primary school in Lagos. We wrote the Lagos State Common Entrance Examination, who also wrote the National Common Entrance Examination. I was admitted to St. Gregory's College, but I still can't comprehend why. I'm not sure if others also had this opportunity. A second letter also came admitting me to Igbobi. My first choice was Greg, second choice was Igbobi, the third choice was Methodist Boys High School. I was admitted to both St. Gregory's College as well as Igbobi. I didn't want to register in either. I was waiting for the results of the National Common Entrance Examination. My dad literally practically forced me. He said, just in case, you must go and register. So off I went to Greg's, I registered. I came home, he said, okay, go and also register in Igbobi. So I went to Igbobi and registered, knowing fully well that the best will surely come. And behold, I was admitted to King's College, Lagos. And I ran from Greg's, and I didn't stop running until I arrived at the gates of King's College, Lagos. The rest is history. But I want to acknowledge that we still have a lot to learn from you. We have a lot to learn from Igbobi. I visited St. Gregory's College in recent times, and the progress that you've made is simply phenomenal. If you want to see practical results of a PPP in work in progress, go to St. Gregory's College. I also want to acknowledge Igbobi. A couple of years back, perhaps about 3 years ago, I took on the vice president on this, and he said to me that the best decision that they took as a government, he was the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice under Ashwaji Tinubu. When they were in power, he said the best decision they took was to return the mission schools, all the mission schools, to the Christian missions as well as the Islamic missions. So Holy Child College, St. Gregory's, St. Finbar's, CMS Grammar School, and so on were returned to the Christian missions. Methodist Girls High School, Ansaruddin, Ahmadiyya, and several other colleges were returned to the Islamic missions. And they've thrived, they've done very well. I want to assure you, peers, that when you return King's College to us, and we want this to be a test case, would excel, and you will not regret it. Very finally, I want to join Ola Akpata in also paying tributes to two outstanding Kingsmen. One is the person that he paid tributes to. And I want to join you in appreciating and acknowledging our brother, Pastor Itwa Igodalo, Chairman. Chairman of the year 2020 King's Week, Chairman of our 111th Anniversary Planning Committee. As Olu said, Pastor Itwa, you have inspired us. You have also demonstrated that you are a great man of God, a great man of faith, a great believer in the Almighty. Beyond the call of duty, beyond your calling as a pastor, in the past few months, since you lost your very dear wife, you are a study and an inspiration to each and every single one of us on how to hold very strongly to the Almighty, to believe in Him, to accept His will. As Olu said, we are proud of you and we love you dearly. I also want to grudgingly acknowledge the second person. Grudgingly because he's from High Johnson's house. I wish he were a product of Mike Wright House. Olakpata went to war. He fought a great war and he won a great victory in the name of King's College Lagos. I want, as president of the Nigerian Bar Association, it is instructive that in this era of SANs, he is the first in a long time of a lawyer, a non-son, that was elected president of the Nigerian Bar Association. Secondly, he is also the first person under the age of 50. So he has done all the youths proud to be elected president of the Nigerian Bar Association. And he won big. He didn't imagine the gap wasn't just small, he won big. What he didn't know was I had planned on attending his inauguration in Abuja. That weighed very heavily in my decision not to travel abroad to attend to my leg. However, I don't know whether I should call it a conspiracy or a coup. If it was a coup, he's the chief coupist. Because the inauguration, for reasons that I still have not been, nobody has explained clearly to me, it was brought back forward a day earlier, and I just saw on television his inauguration. May I congratulate you on behalf of all the old boys, as well as present, in fact, the entire King's College community. May I also say that we are all very, very proud of you. Florian, again, thank you very much, and God bless you all. This is 45 or 50 years now. You will tell us. Huh? 45 years ago. Is this 45 or 50 years now? This was in 1975, the last time I wore this thing. But I still have it.
Up Hammond.
I didn't hear that.
Sir, do you believe in the concept of sowing seeds? Sow it as a seed into my life.
Can I ask Dr. Oshini to come on stage also for the group photograph, please?
Yes, we'd like the panelists to please join in this photo. And then, of course, the General Secretary, Mr. Rotimi Ashley, Joe, please join us. The PKC is here already.
Thank you. Thank you all. Can I ask if the school captain is around, please? If the school captain is not around,
Yes. The school captain.
I'd like to ask Mr. Chuma Anosike.
Thank you so much. Thank
No, immediately we'll go. No, I'm okay.
Standing on the existing order of protocol, I am Okoli Victor Somtochukwu, School Captain of King's College 2019-2020 set, if not probably 2021. Hi Johnson House. Up IG. Firstly, I would like to give my utmost gratitude to Almighty God for seeing to the success of this very event. Secondly, I would like to thank the President of the King's College Old Boys Association, in person of Alhaji Kashim Ibrahim and his distinguished associates for devoting their time and pulling together their resources in ensuring the smooth running of this very program. Special thanks goes to our honorable dignitaries and guests who graced today's event with their presence, both physically and virtually. Based on today's topic, which is education, the way forward, I would like to give two quotes which centers on our topic today. Nelson Mandela once said, education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And it's so true. He also said, and I quote, education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of a peasant can become a doctor, that the son of a mine worker can become the head of the mine, that a child of farm workers can become the president of a great nation. It is what we make out of what we have, not what we are given, that separates one person from another. In all, I would like to say that I wish to see you all in a better Nigeria in forthcoming years. Florence.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for the school captain, please. Through the COVID-19 pandemic, the class set of 78 to 80 made a generous donation, 75 to 80, made a generous donation to the school in the provision of a technology hub. I'd like to call on Mr. Chuma Anosike to briefly tell us a little bit about that in recognition of the work of his class set. Thank you, sir.
Guys, can you come up, please? Abim, who's come up? Voewa, Toke, Eju. Anyway, sorry, just because for brevity of time, I will stand on the existing protocol. And just to thank everybody for coming. Now, when class, yes, there's this general assumption that, the president belongs to all class sets, but he actually has a class set. And we are the president's men. Now, when he took over, I know there were a few rumors about, okay, what's the president's class set going to do? But I want to tell you, we're men of vision. We foresaw COVID. So today, we're launching what is essentially a solution to the COVID situation as far as education goes. It's called the Internet eHub. Now, this is the tech guy. I'm just the facilitator. So I'll hand over to Abim to do the details. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I'm going to be very, very brief. Like my colleague here, Chuma, said, we foresaw COVID. But in all seriousness, what we were trying to do is make sure that King's College leads the way, especially amongst the public schools, to be able to facilitate education, not only during the COVID period, but also to build upon that and to do something terrific that can be sustainable going forward. So in this respect, we're going to need the help and support of the wider KCOB Association. What we have tried to do is to phase things out. Phase one was the very important first step, which is to put high-speed internet into the school. So the e-library, PKC's office, the staff room, and generally the admin block has now got high-speed internet connection. Now, I'd like to acknowledge my classmates who've done that. Gentlemen, please stand up and take a round of applause.
A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. So now that we've done that, we invite other sets to add to this to even roll out the high-speed internet much wider and much deeper. The next stage that we're going to embark on is already started, actually. We're working with PKC, Mr. Otuaga. A big thanks goes to Alhaji Jani Ibrahim, his great support. We are talking to Google in some manner of advanced stage now, as well as Microsoft. We want to bring a virtual learning environment to the school so that even when the school is in session, we can continue to help the teachers with training, with content, and education of the students, and then try to use that blueprint to expand out to other public schools. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, class set of 75 to 80. The first stages of the PPP are already on stream. We are already partnering with the government in the running of the school, but we want more. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Can I call on the General Secretary, Mr. Rotimi Ashley Dejo, to please give the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Floriat. Your Excellencies, my Lords spiritual and temporal, everyone. I'm going to tell you a story, but before I do that, I want to put the house issue, since I have the final word, to rest. And I'm going to put some context into the supremacy of houses. These are just facts. High Johnson's house won the maiden edition of the Inter-House Sports Competition in 1920.
Tell them.
And exactly 100 years afterwards, High Johnson's house won the competition yet again. I'll leave it there. Now, let me move on with my vote of thanks. There is a lot of nostalgia up here on this stage. Many of you that I will refer to as the older generation were initiated into King's College. If you were not initiated into King's College, we will fix that problem when we take over the school. We will make you proper King's College men. I was initiated right about this spot in 1981, and I drank brine. Many of you here probably drank brine too. So I want to tell you a story really quickly. In 1979, just like my president, I took the common entrance a year early and I passed and I went to St. Finbarr's College. I have been fagged and I have mounted many times for that transgression. Please, you will pardon me for that. But I have I have found the light. I came to King's College. And I had to do the common entrance, the federal common entrance again. In other words, I did Form 1 all over again because I told my father that I wanted to come to King's College no matter what. And I recall back in '79, I was doing really good in St. Finbar's. And my dad was skeptical about the shift, that it might affect me. And I recall he was having a conversation, an argument with his old classmate, the late Professor Ayodeji Awojobi, Professor of Mechanical Engineering. Professor Awojobi argued with my dad that he must let me go to King's College, despite the fact that they were both classmates in CMS Grammar School. They were both grammarians. And my father's concerns were probably valid. I do not recall the content of the arguments, but what made the biggest impact on me was the fact that these two great men were having an argument about little old me. And so that inspired a determination in me that if indeed I passed the federal common entrance and I came to King's College, I must not let Professor Awojobi down. And what's my message is, when we engage in erudite conversations, when we engage, when we express our opinions in forums like this, we create value. That argument back in '79 created in my life. And so it is never wasted. We must continue to express ourselves and our opinions. We must engage in intellectual combat so that things may be better. The outcomes may be from the unexpected, such as in my case, or from the expected. In this case, the dialogue that we've had here today, we have expectations, big expectations, that we have created value here. And so I will not say too much more. I would like to ask all the members of the planning committee to please join me up here very quickly, very quickly. Tokwe, Wande, everybody please come up here and just flank me. So I'd just like to thank everyone from the speakers, special guests, the Hammonds, the Paynes, the Makirites, the High Johnsons, KCOBs. Thank you all very much. Our guests, our friends, friends of King's College, all the folks on the virtual platforms, we thank you very much. Please join me. Please flank me. We're done very quickly. Mr. Chairman,
Yusuf
sir.
Buhari too should join wherever he is.
His virtual. So, well, you will notice one thing about the people up here. Most of us are small stature men. You know, they say dynamite comes in small packages. I would like to acknowledge the work that this team has done. They've done phenomenal work. From Wande Olowoyeye, our committee secretary, he's the sweat merchant. Where's Bayo? Bayo, run around guy. The Wiz himself, Mr. Ogunshemo, Tokwe, Mr. Kele, my brother. Did I miss anybody? Is our MC, Chief Ede Dafinone, my big brother. And Yusuf Buhari is beaming in from Abuja. He couldn't be here. I'd really like to ask everyone in the audience, could you please rise and please give these gentlemen, hang on a second. I missed the most important gentleman. My chairman, sir. They've all said it. He's an inspiration. Pastor Itwa, despite personal tragedy, responded as the call in our school song says. When the call is sounded, all must answer. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you. Please rise and applaud these men. Give them a resounding King's College round of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think what is left for us all is to sing our school song. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
We started with prayer, and it would only be right that we end with prayer. Can I ask Mr. Aladesomi to please come up and give us the closing prayer? While he's on his way up, I'd just like to mention briefly that we had up to 5,000 people registered to join this teleconference. So whilst we're following social distancing rules here, this conference is being beamed all over the world to Kingsmen and others in the private sector all over the world. Thank you.
Also, just to remind all of us of our annual general meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. It's also going to be transmitted live, so you can look at that from the comforts of your own. The ESCO will be here. Anybody who desires to be here, you are most welcome. But everybody else, you'll receive the AGM virtually tomorrow. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Shall we pray? Father, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to come together this evening. We thank you for being with us, for guiding us in this assembly. We thank you for your grace upon our lives and for being with us in all that we've been through today. We thank you for bringing us back here safely, and we pray, Lord, that all that we deliberated upon today shall be crystallized into concrete terms hereafter in Jesus' mighty name. We pray that you be with us as we go back to our various destinations, both within and outside the state. And we pray, Father, that you guide us in all endeavors so that in whatever we do, we will always have cause to give thanks unto you. In Jesus' mighty name we pray.
Please, a round of applause for him. Leaving this place without singing our school anthem is definitely incomplete. Our school song is definitely incomplete. So, on the count of 3, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we go 1, 2, and 3.
Shall our motto be, let us shout it boldly, for her sons are we.
Thank you all very, very much. I want to acknowledge the presence of the principal, Queen's College Old Girls Association. Thank you very much. And also members of the ESCO of the Queen's College Old Girls Association and some Queen's College old students. Thank you very much for coming. There will be light cocktails on your way out. Thank you, Honorable Permanent Secretary. Thank you, President. Thank you, OBABS. Thank you, everybody, for being part of this. Thank you.
The initiatives taken by the national body, the national executive, in getting closer to the branches. Abuja branch, I believe, is one of the most active branches of the association. And the past couple of years, we have moved our membership strength from 250 to 300, 350. And then we've tried to improve on the social interaction level of old boys. We've instituted certain events, certain activities to enhance this. We now have periodic sporting events. We also have taken up the initiative of visiting old boys, particularly the senior old boys, as a way of bringing the older ones closer to the younger ones. You know, in line with our school song, part of our school song, which says, present, past, and future forms one mighty whole. And I believe we will continue to grow from strength to strength. And once again, I want to congratulate the association on the 111th year anniversary. Thank you very much.
My name is Leke Oshuni, and I'm the Deputy President of the King's College Old Boys Association. I enrolled in King's College in the year 1971, and I'm a member of the 71-77 set. Now, I'm standing in the lobby of the oldest building in this campus, the original campus of King's College. And it's important that I tell you the story of how this building came to be. September is a very important month in the history of King's College. On this particular occasion, on the 12th of September, 1906, during the reign of King Edward VII, the governor of the colony of Lagos, Sir Walter Egerton, issued a decree that the members of the armed forces who are located and barracked on these premises should vacate the premises to a point about 1 kilometer east of this place, which came to be known as Obalinde, translated to mean the king sent me here. The area was cleared, and within 3 years, this structure